This is The Guardian.
Hello, I'm Faye Carruthers and welcome to The Guardian Women's Football Weekly. Is there anything better than a come-from-behind win? I mean, maybe a few things, but certainly not in football terms. Arsenal and Chelsea both overturned 2-0 deficits to reach the semi-finals of the Champions League. We'll discuss how they did it. Aston Villa and West Ham have given themselves a Barclays UWCL lifeline, while the Championship is setting itself up for a grandstand finish. And we'll tee up the international break with Nations League fixtures on the horizon. All that, plus we'll take your questions, and that's today's Guardian Women's Football Weekly. What a panel we have today. Suzy Wrack, how has your week been?
Stressful, but fine.
Oh no, I don't like to hear that. Why stressful?
Well, you know, I'm waiting on emergency surgery on my gallbladder and it's not happened yet, so that's fun.
Ugh, still. Oh, we could do a whole pod on this, without a doubt. I think we all need to write letters.
Can we pivot to an NHS pod? Is that a weird thing?
Yes. No, it's not a weird thing, I don't think, in the slightest. I think we should do, Tom Garry. What do you think?
In comparison to that, I'm very, very well. So just, hoping that Suzy's all right, really. The fact she's even up at this time in the morning deserves applause, really. So thank you for doing it at 8 o'clock, Suzy.
up and about at this time, like for the last 2 years, actually. Emma Sanders, how are you doing?
Yeah, I mean, I was going to gloat that I managed to remember to take the bins out last night, but that feels a little bit silly now. So I'm just going to backtrack a little bit.
It's an achievement, I would say. I did it last week while my husband was away and I patted myself on the back. I think it's a huge achievement. So well done you.
Thank you. Thanks, everyone.
Yeah, you're very welcome. Well done to Arsenal and Chelsea as well. Bit of deja vu going on this week. Both turned over 2-0 deficits in the Champions League to book their spots in the semi-finals. Let's start with Arsenal, shall we? They got back from that very muddy Real Madrid pitch, knowing that they had work to do at the Emirates to get themselves into the last four, and they did it. It finished Arsenal 3, Real Madrid 0. 3 second-half goals, 2 from Alessia Russo and a finish from Mariona Caldente. And they dominated, actually, from the start, Suzy, didn't they? Little bit nervy at the break with the match still goalless, but how did they get the job done, ultimately?
I was a mess. Poor Emma Sanders was sat next to me, and I think in that first half I might have silently screamed into her shoulder about 5 times at the wastefulness, because Arsenal were just so unbelievably dominant. The difference was really, really simple. It was so obvious in the first half that Chloe Kelly's balls into the box were causing problems and there was just no one on the end of them. And I feel like that would have been the message at half time. Someone get on the end of Chloe Kelly's crosses. It led to the first 1 minute after the break, and then it led to the second through Caldente 3 minutes later. And you were like, finally. I think that was key. It was being more clinical. And in the right positions in the box, paying more attention to Chloe Kelly's crosses, who was basically giving Olga Carmona nightmares all the way through the game until she was subbed off. And once that was done, then they got it going. But yeah, I don't know how they went 45 minutes without sort of taking more advantage of it. I actually thought at half time that it was gone. Real Madrid, having weathered that storm for 45 minutes, going in at the break would be full of confidence coming out into the second half and might actually show a little bit more, but I thought they were quite disappointing and continue with the same game plan, and that's where it fell apart for them when Arsenal shifted things a little bit.
I was at the Women in Football Be Inspired conference on the Wednesday, and lots of people were heading off to the game afterwards. As I saw you, Suzy, didn't I? And I was talking to Luca Russo, who's Alessia Russo's brother and an agent, and I said, I've just got a really good feeling. I don't know why I've got a really good feeling. I just have. And not that quite good a feeling, but maybe I've got a new job as a soothsayer, perhaps. I can never actually predict wins for my own team, ever.
Our predictions are crap. Stop trying to
I
claim
know.
this.
Well, listen, I'm claiming it. I'm absolutely claiming it. They're terrible on this pod normally, but I'm taking this one. But I tell you what, Tom, that this relationship between Chloe Kelly and Alessia Russo is really flourishing. It's great to see. They were standout performances, both of them. Russo's currently the joint top scorer in this competition as well. 17 goals to her name across the season additionally, which feels like it's maybe given Arsenal a bit of a new dimension and could be exciting not just for club but for country as well.
Yeah, Russo's really taken things to another level in the last few months. She's scored 14 times in her last 21 games for club and country, so she's on a really good run and just seems to be playing with a level of confidence that we've not seen for a few years now. So it's really good to see. Kelly's had a good impact on that team. And I think what we're seeing now with Chloe Kelly is somebody who just seems to have had like the shackles let off, and she just playing with this freedom to kind of just have a run at people and put crosses into the box. And that was, as Suzy said, that was a big difference the other night. The kind of the balls coming into the box that Real Madrid couldn't really deal with. I just felt that this and the Chelsea comeback, kind of comebacks that, regardless of who was the ultimate winner, are just really good for the competition. Like there's something just feels right about the home teams in front of like good atmospheres, making resurgent fight backs. And the first 45 minutes for Chelsea and those second 45 minutes for Arsenal, two of the best 45-minute kind of performances that we've seen all season from anybody. And I thought they were both terrific. So, but no, you're absolutely right to highlight Russo, who I think is slowly starting to look like the really elite striker that we've all thought that she could be for the last sort of 5-6 years. There's always been goals there, but they're really the kind of all-round game goals and assists now are starting to step up to that top bracket of striker that I think we've always thought she could be.
Renee Slagers said it was the clearest example of her side's ability to find a way back into games, Emma, and it's not the first time this season that they've managed to come from behind. Where does this newfound resilience come from?
Yeah, it's the ultimate question, isn't it? I mean, I think when you look at the individuals, certainly while Tom was talking there about Alessia Russo, I was thinking that it seems to me that there's a bit of an aura there now with her, which I maybe haven't seen before. And I don't think she's the only one in that Arsenal team that feels like they have a bit more of an aura in the last sort of couple of months than certainly they did at the start of the season. So I think individually that's starting to show there's more confidence, there's more, sort of free-flowing attacking players, a bit more creativity, because I think that's just the players are a little bit more comfortable and therefore they're showing their personality on the pitch. But naturally, success and victories give you that confidence. And I think as soon as you get a run of games together, that resilience builds because you believe in what you're doing. You believe in the messages that Renee Slagers is bringing across, and you believe in your teammates and the confidence that they have. And I think it's a mixture of everything, isn't it? It all comes together at the same time. It can evaporate quickly, and we've seen that happen to all football clubs. But when you are in this moment, it's just about, sorry for the cliche, but I suppose riding that wave, isn't it? And I think Arsenal have really enjoyed, playing under Renee Slagers. And yes, it's not been all highs, but certainly in the last couple of weeks, you can tell by their performances that they're just really enjoying their football, and obviously the results are following.
You never have to apologise for a cliche on this pod. You know that, don't you? From a Real Madrid perspective, Suzy, I mean, they're going to be kicking themselves, aren't they? But they struggled, and were you maybe surprised by the way they struggled and some of the decisions that their manager Alberto Torreon made? It just didn't impact the game at all.
Yeah, I mean, surprised and not surprised, which doesn't really say much. I think Torreon said afterwards that they've played the most games of any other team in the competition, which is true because they have a 16-team league. So, obviously more teams in the WSL, and they were in Champions League qualifying, so they've played more than Barcelona even. So, they are a stretched side. They had a busy run of games. They had that impressive defeat of Barcelona, their first, just before that game. So I think they were pretty exhausted. And then you look at the benches, and I think a lot of people were looking at the benches before the match and going, this is where it's going to be won and lost because the depth just isn't there. They've got a really great, really strong starting 11, but sort of outside of that, in terms of impact players, they've not really got much. They're not really able to rotate to the same extent. Like it's much weaker. You know, they're still babies in terms of existence and European competition. They've only reached the quarterfinal stage once before in the first year that they were in the competition in 21-22, and they got absolutely hammered by Barcelona across 2 legs. So like the past 2 seasons they've not got out of the group stage, so they're not European elite. You know, it's not the equivalent of the men's team. In that sense, I don't think we should be surprised that they sort of, you know, kind of collapsed the way they did, having expended all that energy in the game against Barcelona. I thought that, like I say, at the break, having weathered that storm, that they would have sort of come out with a little bit more confidence in the second half, and that is where the disappointment is for me, really. And I suppose that's a bit of like maybe the tiredness coming in, or a slight conservatism in that, you know, not wanting to expend too much energy when you haven't got that level on the bench to come in. They didn't really have a plan B, I don't think, other than to defend that 2-goal cushion from the first leg, and I think they needed to try it. They needed to try and get a goal, and they didn't really do that effectively at all.
Speaking of European elite teams, 8-time Champions League winners, Lyon are Arsenal's opponents up next, couple of weeks' time, which means a reunion as well with former manager Joe Montemurro. Lyon beat Bayern Munich 6-1 on aggregate to make the semi-finals. With Arsenal matching their more than a decade-long record of being the only team to overcome a 2-0 deficit in a Champions League quarter-final, let that little stat sink in. It was over to Chelsea to try and do the same, which is exactly what they did. Chelsea against Manchester City, the final game of this quadrilogy. Oh my God, it's like a bloody epic, isn't it? Under the Stamford Bridge lights this time. City had won the first leg, as we know, by 2-0, but at Stamford Bridge, it finished Chelsea 3, Manchester City 0. Goals from Sandy Baltimore, Natalie Bjorn and Myra Ramirez. And they just came out full speed, didn't they, Tom? And turned it round before half-time, whereas Arsenal were more slow burners and turned the gas on in the second half. It was the opposite for Chelsea. Where was this game won and lost, do you think?
Chelsea just came out, as you said, came out the block so quickly. It's like they were sort of squeezing Man City's neck, and they just wouldn't let the pressure go until they overturned the deficit. They were relentless. It just felt like a game too far for Man City. I never felt in that game as though we ever really saw anywhere near their best. Both teams have injuries, but we know the injuries have been bad for Man City, and just felt like this was a game too far. I'm kind of left after this quadrilogy of games. I'm sort of left wanting more in that I never really felt like we saw the 2-11s.
No, Tom.
But they played each other 4 times, and we've never really seen the 2 best 11s for, you know. I know that's very rare in football that you see the 2 fully fit squads go head to head, but I really want to see that. We didn't really see it. It's an interesting thing that for both leagues to think about, because I thought this with Real Madrid as well, that clearly both the Spanish and the English leagues have tried to target the men's international break for really blockbuster fixtures. So we had Barca, Real Madrid, and obviously Man City played Chelsea in the league games in the middle of these 2 ties. That was probably a good thing for the domestic game, trying to get more crowds into those 2 games. But for the teams involved, probably not what they wanted at all, because they've had these huge league games right in the middle of the massive Champions League games. And I suppose that's probably when you've got the extra quality and depth that Chelsea have with such a good squad, and they could make those changes at the Etihad for the first half. That just gave so much more freshness and intensity, and they could just work their socks off in that second leg to a point where Man City couldn't really live with them. And I got so many games in such a short space of time. It's that squad depth was probably the difference to try and answer your question with a more specific answer. I think ultimately it's the power in the team. And Chelsea fully deserved it. They were excellent. Slight tangent there, but I do wonder if that's something that the leagues will think about. I wonder if clubs will start to appeal to the leagues to maybe not give them the blockbuster game sandwiched in between the Champions League ties, because if you want to help your domestic clubs out, and I think Real Madrid will probably be arguing that, they probably didn't want to have Barcelona in between the 2 games against Arsenal.
Another example of women's football slotting in around men's football or trying to find opportunities there. You know, it's a discussion we have often, isn't it? I'll tell you what, a discussion we have often on this pod as well, Emma, as you know, this is how champions do it, mentality monsters, relentless. All those phrases are always thrown about quite often about Chelsea, but actually that was all on display on Thursday night, and maybe and it's interesting what Tom says there, but maybe this was the first time we've actually seen Chelsea fully hit top gear this season. Is that fair to say?
I think it's fair to say their squad fully hit top gear, because I think we've seen better performances from the starting 11, but this was it was the whole package, wasn't it? It was a whole package on show. It was all of those things that you've mentioned in terms of personality traits, but it was also that real show in depth. For me, it was just, and this was no disrespect to Manchester City, but it was no surprise. Like, just to go on the predictions thing, I actually said I thought it would be 3-0 at half-time to Chelsea.
Yeah, oh my God, we're turning our own deficit around on the pod.
Unreal, isn't it?
It's a very big deficit, to be fair. I'm not sure if we'll ever fully turn it around.
Yeah, that's absolutely not happening. I just felt there was no way in these 4 games Chelsea wouldn't win the games that would matter, because they always have done, and they know how to do it. Obviously, that will stop eventually, but given all of the context that Tom's given around Manchester City and the injuries, yes, Chelsea have got their own as well, but Chelsea's depth is just so much better, and they did what they needed to do, and they were so calm. I was really struck by Sonia Bonpastor's reaction to that defeat in the first leg, and she came out in the press conference and she was just so typically pragmatic. You know, she was like, well, it's not decisive. It doesn't mean anything. And I was kind of like, well, I mean, she's not wrong. And that was the very sort of calm message all week was, you know, we've got 90 minutes. It's absolutely loads of time. We've got a brilliant squad. We can come from behind. And as soon as they took on the pitch, you could see that composure, and you could see that the players genuinely believed, you know, we're the best team in this quadrilogy, and we've got 90 minutes to score 2 goals, and they did it in 45. So, yeah, really impressive, and as Tom says, absolutely deserved to go through. And I tell you what, that semi-final lineup is absolutely blockbuster, isn't it?
Yeah. Oh my goodness me. I mean, we're going to talk about it in a second, because Chelsea have Barcelona. It's just like, you know, deja vu all over again. But I want to talk about Vika captain Suzy, because, you know, Sonia Bonpastor raised a few eyebrows deciding to put her in the 10, but actually she was key to the success ultimately, wasn't she?
Yeah, I mean, I remember someone turning to me and like in the press room and saying, "Oh, the captain, that's a strange choice." And maybe it's because I just really like the captain, but like I wasn't that surprised. In that, like, I really, really rate her every time she's on the pitch. I have been super impressed. So I wasn't like, I mean, it's surprising in a sense in that she's not necessarily played a lot of football this season, and not got many starts, but like in terms of quality, not surprising for me. And it was interesting when Sonia was asked about it after the match, that she basically said sort of, did you watch the game on Sunday? If you watched the game, you'll know exactly why she was on the pitch, because how good she was in the game up in Manchester. And so her vision on the ball, her movement out of possession, you know, I think Sonia said, it's her confidence as well, like all of those things contribute to what she can bring, and like there's an energy there, and also a little bit of the element of surprise as well. I think when you've got 4 teams back to back, being able to bring on someone that the team don't necessarily know as well, although like I say, she did play in the game of the weekend, like just, yeah, gives a little bit of a different dimension to what you're putting up.
Without a doubt, and it goes back to that strength in depth conversation that Tom just said. And actually, Tom, I wonder, you know, when you see where Chelsea are in comparison to Manchester City, it's something that we've discussed before. 4 outfield players on the bench is all City could actually name, and yes, they have injuries, you know, but the club have said that their ambition to be considered amongst the elite in Europe, you know, that's what they want to do. So do actually they need to look at their recruitment strategy? Is it good enough that their recruitment strategy leaves with injuries 4 outfield players on the bench?
Yeah, that's probably a fair criticism to point away at the football club over a longer period, that perhaps they've not, what they failed to do probably is to build up the contingency for those longer term absences. Maybe a little bit too much over reliance on a few really key players, and we saw that even when they were fit. It was very rare to see certain key players rotated, whereas Chelsea can do that. Hey, listen, it all comes down. A lot of it comes down to finances. At the end of the day, let's not forget, that these things will cost money. But I do think that Man City will need to build in a little bit more contingency into the squad. The challenge for that is, though, that if you're trying to plan for that right now, because Man City are not guaranteed Champions League football next season, you can only really build in that squad depth and sign players who you might say to them, okay, well, you might not play every week, but you will, you're going to play European games, you're going to be rotated around. You can only really do that if you got the promise of Champions League football, because if you are just a team just playing WSL football and you've only got the 22 league games to offer, then you might not need to rotate, particularly if you had good luck with injuries, and then suddenly you could then be having a really difficult situation managing a squad of unhappy players who are barely getting any minutes. So there is a fine balance to strike, whereas I suppose because Chelsea are these relentless champions who keep winning the title, they know they can offer that. It's hideously unlikely that they'll finish fourth. Yeah, I'm not trying to make an excuse for Man City squad planning, but that you're right to highlight that issue, because that is the big gap. And I think they've not even brought back people like Sam Kerr yet. We have to think about the extraordinary depth of talent. So, and that has been the difference maker in the past probably 3 or 4 league titles when it's gone down to the wire, and it's the difference maker again at the moment, for Chelsea.
Yeah, and don't apologise for that. You're being balanced. I think that is more than fair. We spoke of déjà vu. I mentioned this already, but Chelsea will face Barcelona in the semi-finals, the 3rd year in a row. Come on, fixtures gods, what are you doing? This is ridiculous now. There are some things that I'm thankful to the fixtures gods for. Not sure whether giving us 4 instalments of Chelsea-Manchester City was entirely necessary, but it does mean I can add a new word to my repertoire: quadrilogy, which I've never heard before. Right, that's it for part 1. In part 2, we're going to look at the Barclays WSL fixtures. We'll catch up on the latest from the Championship and look ahead to the international break. Welcome back to part 2 of the Guardian Women's Football Weekly. Right, over to the Barclays WSL. Let's start with a game that could play a massive part in the relegation battle. Liverpool hosted Aston Villa, and before kick-off, you'll remember, Villa found themselves in trouble, sitting just a point above Crystal Palace at the bottom of the table. Palace were playing Arsenal, so they knew that a result on Merseyside was vital to their chances of survival, and this is how it ended. Liverpool 1, Aston Villa 2. Late winners, and Liverpool had taken the lead through a Marie Hobinger penalty, but Kirsty Hansen hit back her first league goal of the campaign before a very late own goal from Jenna Clark made sure that Villa went home with a very, very valuable 3 points. We've talked a lot on the pods, Emma, about Natalia Arroyo's struggles since she took over, and actually the celebrations said it all, didn't it? It was, that wave of relief, her first ever win in the Barclays WSL. It felt like this was a case of you have to get this done. It is now or never.
Yeah, definitely now or never. And it ended a 7-game winless run, which for club of Aston Villa, obviously they were only in the Championship a few years ago, but they've shown huge progression in their time in the WSL. So to then see them, within a point of relegation, I think just shows all of the errors that's been made at the club. There's a lot of people within that club that has to take accountability, because the fact that they were in that position really is really disappointing. It shouldn't be happening. And I was at Villa Park the week previously, and I was speaking to a lot of people I was writing a piece on their kind of relegation struggles, and there really, really was a concern there. A lot of people, a lot of fans certainly, were angry. There was a lot of anger, which I've not really sensed before from a lot of the Villa fans, certainly during their time in the WSL. They've got a really, really good fan base, really good following, very loyal. And they were just frustrated. They were angry at the situation that they were in because they feel it could have been really avoidable. And I ended up pretty much having a one-to-one with Natalia because there was nobody else sort of there in the press conference room aside from broadcast. So she was very honest in our discussion. And she said that, she didn't want to be the manager of a relegated team. And you could sense the fear in her voice as well. So this will do absolute wonders for them. It was such an important victory, especially to do it at Liverpool, who themselves have had a little bit of a mini honeymoon period under Amber Whiteley since she's come in as interim manager. However, now back-to-back defeats for them. So that's, a little bit of a concern to look at. But yeah, it's just absolutely massive. More in terms of how the table looks. I think Villa, certainly the players, they're more than capable. They've got so much quality, they shouldn't be in that position. But they'll look at that now, and I think just that weight of pressure off their shoulders will just come up a little bit. They're still not safe, but 4 games to go with 4 points clear of Palace. I think that's them now. I think from the outside we can say I think they'll probably be okay.
Yeah, they've given themselves a much better chance, haven't they? That's for sure. And actually, Suzy, Emma mentioned Amber Whiteley. It is a little bit back down to earth with a bump. 5 games in for her. There've been some big results, but still, these 2 defeats back to back may be causing the Liverpool fans to be a little bit, not all is fully rosy.
I mean, obviously one of those was to Arsenal, who, as we've seen, obviously are in rampant form, wanted to avenge that FA Cup quarter-final, which Liverpool beat them in. Oh, you would expect Liverpool to lose that match, right? And yeah, I think, as Emma said, there is a honeymoon period and a new manager, and yeah, that could be starting to wear off. But
well, not always in Aston Villa's case. They're bucking that trend.
But I think there's, like, when you look at Liverpool, there's a massive asterisk in that, like, they are so poorly funded and so poorly backed by the club that there is like a massive excuse there for their performances and for the quality of the squad. Like, even looking at them against the Aston Villa side, right? Like, you look at the quality of the players on the pitch, and Aston Villa on paper, like, should be walking that game, right? Like, so, I mean, there's a problem there with Aston Villa. But then you look at where Liverpool are in the league in 6th, with Brighton above them and West Ham below them, and you look at the quality in those squads, and Liverpool do not match the quality of Brighton and West Ham, like, in terms of player for player across that pitch. So in reality, they're punching above their weight again to a certain extent, position-wise, on where they should be given the investment that goes into that setup and into that team. And that's a big problem. That's not Amber Whiteley's fault. It's not Matt Beard's fault. It's the club's fault, and they need to wake up and properly start investing in the team with some like serious intent. It's insane that you can have a team that is going to win the Premier League most likely and is, kind of spending millions and millions and millions, hundreds of millions on its men's team, like getting away without criticism of how it's treating its women's team. And I say that they do get criticised for it, but I think not enough, right? Like, and it's not fair on the managers that are being asked to come in and do the work and then are the ones that bear the brunt when the results don't go their way and performances don't go their way. Give them the players and the money to be able to build a setup that is actually going to thrive, because they're not getting that. So, like, yeah, the honeymoon could wear off. Yeah, there could be a few more get good games in the honeymoon, but I just don't think it's their fault.
I think when you're talking about investment here, Suze, like, from my opinion, I think this isn't on, facilities and stuff. Liverpool's facilities are world class. It's not on the stuff around the pitch. They've kind of done that now, having had that criticism when they got relegated to the Championship. It almost feels now that investment needs to be directly on the performance of the team. So that has to be on
into the squad, right?
Into the squad. Yeah. So it's increasing the player budget, it's increasing salaries, it's increasing, transfer budget. I think, from my understanding, they were, I think, 9th in the budget of the WSL. So in theory, they should be 9th in the WSL table. But they're, again, as Suzy says, they're punching above their weight. When they finished 4th last season, I think they were around 7th or 8th in the player budget table. So that, for me, is where investment is. It has to be in the playing squad now. they've got such good staff, they've got such good facilities, they've got really good resources, and they've kind of built the stuff around it. It's okay, that's all well and good, but if you want to see the fruits of your labour now, that has to be in the actual playing squad itself.
Yeah, and like obviously that, you just said there, they are about 9th in the investment in the league at the moment, and they were like 6th or 7th last season, right? Like that's a gap that's getting bigger. They're not closing it. Like they should be climbing up, not getting down. So like it's not even just about investing to stand still or investing to sort of keep pace. They should be investing to close gaps, not have them get bigger, which is what is like alarming for me. Is there doesn't seem to be the ambition to do that there at the moment.
Yeah, I think it's a really good point. Chelsea faced a new opponent for the first time in almost 2 weeks. They hosted a rejuvenated West Ham. It finished Chelsea 2, West Ham 2. Chelsea did go into an early lead, goals from Micah Hermano and Aggie Beaver-Jones, but West Ham came back. 2 goals from Shakira Martinez made sure that Rhian Skinner's side secured their first point from Chelsea since March 2019. They'd lost the other 12 games in between, so that is some stat. And they have been building, haven't they, under Rhian Skinner, Tom? It looks like we're finally starting to see the work that she's been doing behind the scenes. How impressed were you with her this weekend?
Good performance from West Ham, wasn't it? 3 games unbeaten for them, and in the past 7 games, they've had 3 wins, 2 draws and only 2 defeats. And, it's a run where they've had some difficult games as well. And I think we should give some kudos to Shakira Martinez. That's 5 goals in her past 7 matches for club and country, if we're including the Germany under-23s in that. And he's a player who, I think it was 7 years ago, she was a top scorer in the Euros, under-17 Euros. And sort of with that came a lot of expectation about this bright young talent and sort of next big thing. And then things went quiet for a few years, possibly. But maybe we're now starting to see her talents really come to the fore, and all the potential that was seen in those youth international tournaments when she was younger is now really starting to shine and be realised. That potential being realised. She's only 23, but I think she's had a good impact, and it's the kind of result that the league needs to see more of. We are gradually seeing it happen a little bit more, but over the last decade, teams from the bottom half going and getting results at Chelsea and Arsenal has been relatively rare, and particularly against Chelsea. And going to these games trying to be neutral, but it's always quite nice to see it happen. Like there's nothing more dull than a weekend when the top 4 all win, and we have so many of those.
Yeah.
So many. I don't want to upset fans of the top 4 clubs, but every now and then it is just a little bit nice to sort of say, oh, okay, yeah, that's well done.
No, I agree with you. It makes for a competitive league. You have to have that jeopardy to make it, to make it entertaining. Let's talk about Chelsea very briefly, because we have focused on them a lot in this pod because of their Champions League exploits. But they did come into this game off the back of March madness. They're still 6 points ahead despite dropping those 2 points. They need just 6 points as well to win the title. Sonia Bonpastor made 7 changes from midweek, which you could expect as well, which kind of meant, Emma, it was a bit of a tired performance, which is fully understandable. But maybe, bearing in mind, we've been talking about their squad depth, we should have expected a bit more from them. What did you make of it?
Yeah, I think the squad that was available should have won the game, and that's no discredit to West Ham, because I do think they've been absolutely brilliant under Rhian since January. So, that was fully deserved. But yeah, look, I think I liked Sonia Bonpastor's comments afterwards, where she said she didn't have any regrets and she had to focus on the players' health. And, we talk about winning at all costs with this Chelsea team, but I suppose the massive asterisk to that, and the most important one, is not at the cost of players' health. And I quite like that honesty from her. But still, the players that were on the pitch should have won the game. And there's an argument that, they could have been 3-0 up in that first half before West Ham really started clicking. And I thought West Ham were brilliant in the second half. But, there is an argument that Chelsea had enough and should have done enough to see out the game. And they just didn't manage it very well. But I do think it's important that those players got a rest. And I think there was also an understanding that, yes, they will try and win every game, and I don't think you can question that about Chelsea's squad. But if there is any game to experiment or rotate in, it is probably these WSL games in between the big Champions League games, because they have a cushion. dropping points isn't a disaster. It's not ideal, but it's not a disaster. So, if she has to risk in order to save her players' health, then it's 100% worth the risk, in my opinion. I think she said afterwards, didn't she, that Millie Bright was just exhausted and it was a danger to keep her on. So when you're in that situation, and she's made 7 changes, I think it's fair. But as I say, that squad should have won the game.
I think they'll take it, though, won't they? They're so close to the unbeaten league season now, aren't they? Palace at home, Man United away, Spurs away, and Liverpool at home. And then if you can get through those, you've got an unbeaten league season.
Wow, the Invincibles.
I think we should really be starting to talk about this possibility that they are going to go a whole season unbeaten. I know it happened with Man City under Nick Cushing in 2016, but it was a much shorter league campaign. Massive respect to Chelsea for getting within 4 games of, and that Man United away game will be very difficult. We're expecting it to be midweek now with the Champions League games forcing the reschedule there, but just that is a prospect that deserves immense praise. You can't really speak highly enough of how well they've done.
Pre-WSL, Arsenal did it as well. Let's just throw that in, particularly in the quadruple year.
But women's football began in 2011, didn't it?
I think we should be mentioning this every single week until the end of the season. Manchester City, of course, the other team that have been involved in every competition in the past month. To avoid the extra travel, they actually stayed down in London following their Champions League exit to prepare for the game in Crawley against Brighton. It finished Brighton 1, Manchester City 2. Kerstin Kasperai opened the scoring, her first goal of the campaign. Viviana Miedema came on to make sure of the 3 points. Brighton did get a consolation in stoppage time through Charlie Rule. And this was always going to be a bit of an intriguing fixture with Dario Vidosic and Nick Cushing, both products of the City football group. City's low numbers not helped by Laia Alexandri pulling up in the warm-up. Saw a youthful centre-back pairing of Gracie Pryor and Naomi Lazell, while Carolyn, Viviana Miedema and Jill Roord were rested. What did you make? Well, not fully rested because Miedema came on as a substitute. But what did you make of the game, Suzy? Was City's experience and quality off the bench the difference?
I think it's just the individual quality they've got in the players that are available, right? Like, obviously, it's not ideal to have Gracie Pryor and Naomi Lazell at the back as your centre-back pairing when you're a squad of City's quality and size, when you've got the likes of Viviana Miedema able to come off the bench, and Kerstin Kasperai, I think, has actually had a really, really strong season. Like, there's elite quality there that can make a difference when your back is against the wall a little bit, which it was. I mean, the stats are pretty damning. Brighton 53%, well, nearly 54% possession, 23 shots to 12, 44 touches in the opposition box to Man City's 27. Like, Brighton dominated that game, but I would say it's having that elite level of player in there, limited and injury hit 11 and, well, I say 11, 23 or whatever it is, that gave them the edge. I mean, that's basically it. Had to be gritty, and then you have to have the quality that can, pull something out of nothing when there's not much on the table for you.
Brighton's unbeaten home run came to an end, but how much, Emma, will Dario Vidosic take from that performance, particularly after the disappointment of that defeat to Leicester last week?
Yeah, I think he seemed pretty pleased with the performance. Obviously, as Suzy said there with the stats, it was clear that Brighton were, in terms of performance-wise, were the better team. I think he'll still be really frustrated, though, that this has actually happened a lot this season, and they just haven't been able to either, finish things off or maybe compete in terms of points-wise as they would have liked to. I mean, there is quite a big gap between 5th and 4th. So obviously, the 2 teams that were playing Brighton, Man City. But you do think if they perform like this next season and just get a little bit more experience, a little bit more nous about them, then I really, really think that they can compete more in terms of points in that, getting closer to the top 4. So I think there'll be a mixture of, considering it's a first season under him, I don't think anyone can say it hasn't been, a really, really positive season for Brighton. But yeah, there must be a little tinge of disappointment or frustration that they haven't been able to turn some of these performances into more points.
Yeah, definitely. But, building foundations for sure. Crystal Palace had a tough ask, didn't they? Looking to upset the apple cart against Arsenal in front of a record crowd in Sutton. Look, the Barclays WSL fixtures are fast running out for them, and they need to see every game as an opportunity for valuable points. But unfortunately for Leif Smerud's side, it was a routine afternoon for the Gunners. It finished Crystal Palace 0, Arsenal 4, thanks to a brace from Beth Mead, the 11th goal of the season for Alessia Russo in the league, and an unfortunate own goal for Alison Swarby. And things are looking really tough, aren't they, Tom, for this Palace side? 4 points adrift now after we thought that they'd really started to turn a corner. 4 games left in the campaign, and they have Chelsea, West Ham, Leicester and Manchester City. Villa, in contrast, have Tottenham, Arsenal, West Ham and Brighton. What do you make of their chances?
I think that own goal late winner for Aston Villa has put a huge shift into this. What it's done essentially is said to Crystal Palace, you have to beat West Ham and Leicester at home to realistically have a chance here. Best will in the world. Are they likely to get anything away to Chelsea or away to Man City? That's asking a lot. West Ham have shown it's possible to go and get a point away at Chelsea, but that's a sort of thing that Palace are going to need now. But the pressure has all been heaped onto those 2 home games. I spoke to somebody behind the scenes at Aston Villa last week before they won at Liverpool, and with at that stage 5 games to go, they thought the Villa needed to win twice. They thought that would be enough, and I don't think Liverpool away was the banker. So they're probably in a really much. They're not safe yet. They've still got work to do.
They're ahead of what they were thinking.
Yeah, and hey, not ahead of what they were thinking. At the start of the season, of course not. But I think that they knew they had to end the losing run, and Villa hadn't won a game since the last time they won a game in December. That Kenza Dali and Adriana Leon were the goal scorers. They hadn't won a game since they left in January. So this was a big moment for them. Look, for Palace, there is still hope. There is still hope, but I think to worry, and I still think they can get. I still think they'll get more points. But I think they needed somebody else to have a really bad end of the season, and it probably doesn't look like that's going to happen now. There's still a chance they're going to have to win those 2 home games and hope that the other teams don't win. And realistically, now you fear for them. And we joked about predictions earlier, didn't we? But I think I was the only one on the pod at the start of the season to say that Palace would go down. One of our friends said Everton to go down. We need to get them back on and wind them up about that, because they're in the top half.
I think I also might have said Everton.
In that case, I'm being cruel. But no, still a chance for Palace. They're not dead and buried, but they have to win those home games and maybe get a rabbit out of the hat in one of the away games too.
Do you know what? Because our predictions are so bad, I then purposefully forget to write them down every year, so then I forget what I've actually predicted. We should go back and have a listen.
Keep receipts, don't worry.
I bet you do. Well, let's see where we thought Arsenal were going to finish, because they're back up to second. Their 6th straight win in the league. But I want to talk about, because we've spoken a lot about Arsenal, Suzy, but I want to talk about Beth Mead. 2 goals, a gorgeous left-footed volley and a trademark crot. And it was a really emotional day for her as well, wasn't it?
Oh yeah, obviously, given that it was Sunday and Mother's Day, difficult time for her. Incredible performance, wonderful goals. The thing that excited me most was her relationship with Chloe Kelly, because I think there's been a little bit of conversation about which one of them starts, and this showed that they both can. Those 2 wide with Alessia Russo in the middle is incredibly exciting for England.
Yeah, it is, isn't it? Leicester far from their best on Sunday, but they did get a vital extra point in a draw with Spurs, giving themselves a little bit more breathing space in the relegation battle. It finished Leicester 1, Spurs 1. Josephine Rybrink's own goal saw the Foxes take the lead before Drew Spence levelled things up to split the points. And Tottenham actually dominated this one, didn't they? Tottenham Hotspur. Tottenham Hotspur dominated this one. They created 23 opportunities, 11 on target. Probably should have done better with that, really, Emma. But relieved with the point, or frustrated that they didn't take more opportunities?
Frustrated, 100%. This is a Tottenham squad that the messaging all season has been that they want to be challenging to get into the Champions League in the sort of near to long term future, and they're just absolutely miles off it at the moment. I think they've had a pretty poor season actually overall, but yeah, as you say there, they completely dominated. No goals from Arthur Thomas this season, I believe, in the league.
Crazy that.
It is crazy considering, how much of an important role she had in their run to the FA Cup final last year. Yeah, they've only scored, I think, 21 goals across the whole league campaign. So I think it's been a real struggle, hasn't it, to be ruthless in front of goal. And they need to address that. It's all well and good playing some nice football, some areas of the pitch, but if you're not scoring goals and you're not winning games, I think something's got to change.
Yeah, they miss Grace Clinton, that is for sure, and she's ripping up trees with Manchester United, who continue their hunt to hold on to a Champions League spot. Another win at home for them. It finished Manchester United 2, Everton 0. Dominique Janssen and Grace Clinton on the score sheet. And Mark Skinner's side actually now have a 7-point gap over Manchester City in fourth, and they're just quietly going about their business. Is it fair to say that, Tom?
Yes, still having, I think, a better season than people predicted. We always should caveat it with the fact that they, of the big four, they're not juggling European football. So, as you often expect, the team who isn't juggling it should do a bit better in the domestic games. But nonetheless, they do deserve a lot of credit. As we said before on the pod, they're defensively very, very strong, and that's really been a hallmark of their season. They look like they're going to end the campaign with the fewest goals conceded, and they're very, very good without the ball. I think that's important to stress. They look very well coached without the ball this season, and really what a good unit. Can they get in the Champions League? I think now I'm starting to think yes. The last three fixtures are obviously we know are really, really difficult. Playing all of the top the other sides in the top four, but they put themselves in a position now where if they can win one of those games, they'll be in Europe. So, and I think probably earlier in the campaign, you might have expected they would need to win, to go on to win all, two of those or go unbeaten in that stretch against the rivals, and they can now afford to lose to Chelsea, for example, and it's still possible. So they've got themselves in a really healthy position. Should they be aspiring for better? Yeah, yes, I still think they should still be sitting down at the end of the season and thinking, what can we do to actually really, really challenge Chelsea for the title? That should be the aspiration, but they are nearly there for Europe, and that is a big step forward, given that they were fifth last season and things weren't looking great, I think, last summer in the league, finishing below Liverpool. So credit to them, still work to go, but they're almost there for Champions League, and I think they would tick a big box there with mission accomplished for that. And then I suppose the big question is, can they get through to the FA Cup final, which they will probably look upon now as their biggest game, because I think if they get in Europe and get to the FA Cup final, for a third season in a row in the cup final, I think they would start to reflect on that as quite a healthy thing.
Yeah, I agree. Right, let's focus on the Championship. There's a new leader at the top of the table. London City Lionesses have taken full advantage of their game in hand over Birmingham City. It was a 2-1 win over Newcastle United, sending them 2 points clear with 3 games to play, and the top two are going to play each other on the final day of the season. I love this. League this season. Elsewhere, Charlton held off a comeback from Sunderland to stay third in a 7-goal thriller. Durham put 6 past Portsmouth to consolidate their spot in fourth. Down at the bottom of the table, Blackburn earned a huge 1-0 win over Southampton to move 5 points clear of the drop, while Sheffield United's 3-0 defeat at the hands of Bristol City sees them stay bottom of the pile. Right, international football returns this week in the form of the Nations League. England will play a double-header with Belgium. Sarina Wiegman named her squad last week that saw Maisie Simons receive her first senior call-up. Beth Mead and Fran Kirby also make their returns from injury. What are you expecting to see from the Lionesses in this camp, Suzy?
I mean, I think there's a real opportunity to take the advantage in the group. Obviously, they're second at the moment, level on points with Portugal above them. Spain play Portugal. So there's, 2 wins and they will likely move top and have a real chance to sort of kind of assert their authority on the group going into the final couple of games. But that, is not necessarily a straightforward ask. Belgium are a decent team. We saw them do so well against Spain. What excites me is having Fran Kirby back. I think she's really important because when you look at the squad available for England now, I think in pretty much every area of the pitch, the squad is quite strong, even with the injuries to the likes of Alex Greenwood and Lauren Hemp and stuff. But midfield is where it's weak. I think the loss of Georgia Stanway is massive. So, the experience is coming from Ella Toone and Kira Walsh. And then it's quite young, Grace Clinton, Jess Park, Maisie Simons. So having Fran Kirby back in that mix, I think, is really important because, she adds a layer of experience and creative genius that isn't there otherwise. I'm quite worried about that midfield looking ahead to the Euros. But rest of the pitch, I think the squad looks really strong.
Yeah. Elsewhere in League A, Scotland will face a big test. They face Germany twice. Wales, meanwhile, host Denmark in Cardiff before travelling to Gothenburg to face Sweden. And in League B, Northern Ireland play Romania twice. And the Republic of Ireland look to get back on track with a double header against Greece. Right, finally, little bit of housekeeping, Tom, because you reported on Wednesday that the FA has decided not to go ahead with their proposals to expand tiers 3 to 6 in 2026, including introducing WSL B teams into the mix. What can you tell us about this decision?
Yeah, this is quite a big moment actually for the women's pyramid in England. I appreciate all the eyes of the women's world were on the game between Arsenal and Real Madrid, so understandably this probably went under the radar. But in January the FA proposed major changes to the lower leagues to expand the divisions and change the promotion rules and crucially introduce WSL B teams into the Women's National League system from Tier 4. And since then they've been talking to clubs, they've talked to parents of academy players, they've talked to other stakeholders, they've talked to the Football Sports Association, and in the end the clubs were given a chance to do a survey. And from an email that was sent to all the lower league clubs last week that The Guardian has seen, the FA say that they had 144 clubs respond and 55% said they were in support of the proposals. But what the FA have said is that because there was so much feedback, and I think from my understanding quite a lot of that feedback did raise concerns about this B team idea, amongst other things, they've decided that it is time to just take a step back and look at other options and keep exploring other options. So, I can read you some of that email. The FA saying to clubs that given what we have heard, it is recognised that more work is required to find the right solution to the challenges, and the current proposals will not be moving forward at this time. So that means this would have meant changes coming in from 2026. It means that the leagues will stay as they are in terms of the league sizes. There'll still be one up, one down, some clubs won't be happy with that because a lot of clubs were hoping that there'd be secondary promotion places or playoffs and other things. So there'll still be a few clubs worried that there's a bottleneck in the lower leagues. For the supporters and other clubs who would raise worries about B teams entering the pyramid, and that's not going to happen from 2026. So a big decision there taken by the FA.
Huge. Right. It's been a joy, as it always is. Emma Sanders, thank you very much. Let's see you soon.
Nice to see you guys. See you on England international break.
Indeed. Tom Garry, lovely to see you.
Lovely to see you too.
By the way, I've been watching just above your head. It's looked like you've had barbed wire above your head. I know that it's lights and that when they're turned on in the evening, it looks really lovely, safe and twinkly. But at the moment, it looks like you're in prison.
No, it's worse than that, Faye. They're Christmas lights that I've not been bothered to take down.
Oh, it's April the 1st. Oh, it's April Fool's Day. How did we not do an April Fool's Day intro and joke?
They're ready for next year. So we think of the time I'll save next December.
Amazing.
That'd be great for Eurovision.
Yeah. Yes.
Maybe that's the April Fool, that actually it's Christmas Day today.
Oh,
we just don't know.
Do we get presents?
Oh yeah, I'll get you a present, Suzy. I'll see you all soon, team. Keep having your say. Send in your questions via social media. Email us at womensfootballweekly@theguardian.com as well. And as ever, a reminder for you to sign up to our weekly women's football newsletter. All you need to do is search Moving the Goalposts, sign up. The Guardian Women's Football Weekly is produced by Sophie Downey and Hattie Moyer. Music composition was by Laura Iredale. Our executive producer is Sal Ahmad.